I park in the Garland district, walk past a bike rack shaped like a wiener dog, and head toward Beerocracy, where I'm about to go on the blindest blind date I've ever stumbled into and she's ever stumbled away from. And I'm nervous and kind of a little, because blind dates aren't my style of romance. People that know me know that my style of romance is to gradually, over a series of years, develop a will they, won't they relationship that always ends in won't they. Or will they? No, it's not going to. But what if we, no, sorry, it wouldn't be prudent. But in this particular case, I mean, we almost, sorry man, that's the writers for you, blame them. And the other challenge is that I know that the problem with blind dates is they're inherently a judgment. Because you know the person setting you up on the blind date is trying to set you up with someone who is of equivalent attractiveness to you. And so it's like if you keep getting set up on dates where it's like Hitler, and then Stalin, and then Saddam Hussein, you start to think eventually, why does my friend think I'm into guys with mustaches? But the good news is that my this date has been set up by the person who lives across the hall from me in my apartment. And if there's one person who truly knows your heart's desires, it's the person who sometimes accidentally gets your mail by mistake. And so as I head to Beerocracy, I'm actually feeling uncharacteristically confident because the day I've had has been uncharacteristically interesting. It could actually impress the right woman. Does she like wildlife or nature or photography? Well, that morning, I was just at the Turnbull Wildlife Refuge, where I was photographing a group of Canadian geese flying in and landing amid a bevy of alabaster swans with long, elegant necks. And does she like culture, the shared fabric of humanity? Well, that afternoon I was at Spokane International Airport, where I was photographing a group of Iraqi refugees flying in and landing amid a bevy of alabaster white Americans with long, elegant necks. So the right woman I could impress. The question was, would she be the right woman? So I walk into Beerocracy and I see her, and she's actually pretty attractive. Her with hair as black as her lipstick, but she doesn't have glasses, and she's not currently reading a 19th century novel about class consciousness in provincial Italy, so she doesn't seem like my type. But I sit down with her anyways, and I start to engage her in conversation, and about a minute into our introduction, she turns around with her back to me and starts talking to the guy next to me, which, frankly, seemed like a bad sign for our burgeoning relationship. But I don't give up, because I know that she's drinking alcohol. And in my experience with enough alcohol, any woman eventually will be willing to listen to me talk about bird photography. So a couple minutes later, maybe 20 minutes later, I turn to her again, open my mouth, and see that her mouth is also open to better accommodate the tongue of the person next to her, which honestly seemed like a bad sign for our burgeoning relationship. But the night wasn't over yet, because as we're getting ready to leave, she comes up to me and she asks me if I will give her a ride home because, and I quote, "I know you're not going to try to F me." And she's right, because I'm the sort of person that's not even willing to say the actual words she used in a classroom that previously contained children. And I also know that, but she kind of says it in sort of like a mean, judgmental way, like, "Why are you so lame?" But I'm okay with that, because I don't know much about dating or effing, but damn can I chastely drive a girl home. It's like I learned in young life, a strong moral compass is far sexier than sex appeal. And so I link arms with her, feeling somewhat like a hero or a saint, not Jesus, but maybe one of the lesser apostles, Simon say. And as I'm beginning to walk, but immediately I begin to realize there's a problem. I begin to see that she's unstable. And I don't mean mentally. I mean like in a structural engineering international building code sense, where she's been drinking so much that trying to just keep her upright is like trying to play a Jenga game on a trampoline in an earthquake. If you've ever seen that moment in Wizard of Oz where the Tin Man's leaning one way and the Tin Man's leaning the other, and they're chasing her, chasing the Tin Man each way? It was like that all along the yellow brick road until we get to the until there's a sickening sensation that begins to rise up in my stomach, not unlike the sickening sensation that my date had just deposited on the Garland movie theater parking lot. In that moment, I didn't technically remember where I had parked. And to be clear, I mean, this wasn't the first date where I'd forgotten where I parked. This wasn't my first time around the block, or other blocks as I looked for my car. But I had never been in this situation with a woman who was so drunk. And immediately, there's several problems that begin to arise. The first thing is that she's beginning to figure out that I have no idea what I'm doing. And she says, babe, come on, take me to my car, babe. And first of all, I don't feel we're at the point in our burgeoning relationship where it's okay to call me babe. I'm not okay with anybody calling me babe at any point unless they're a Sherry's waitress, a mythical lumberjack, or currently swaddling me in a manger. And either way, like I'm beginning to. The other second problem is that I'm beginning to. Is that she is incredibly drunk, and so this is a situation where I'm looking around and we're going. It's like I was in a nightmare, twisted version of Toy Story, where one moment she's like, "You got a friend in me, babe," and the next moment it's like Andy just walked in. She would ragdolls toward the ground. It was like even in the best moments, she was doddering forward like an old man. In the worst moments, like a dead man. Bernie Sanders, Weekend at Bernie's. And in this case, I don't even know where Bernie's is. And so I'm beginning to travel forward and trying to figure out what to do about that. She keeps asking me these really difficult questions like, babe, why don't you remember where you parked? And babe, why are you so lame? And those are exactly the same two questions I've been asking myself for my entire life. And I don't know the answer to. I mean, would that I were a goose, was able to navigate with the Earth's magnetic fields instead of being bound to terra firma by these accursed wingless legs. And that's when I get an idea. Every guy in high school has a hero fantasy. And if we're a football player, your fantasy might be the creep is harassing a cheerleader and you walk up and you punch that creep with your football fists. But I wasn't a football player. I was a cross-country runner. And my fantasy was that I would be walking with Julie from math class at Wild Horse Canyon Young Life Camp, and she would get hurt, and then I would run and go get help. And so this was my moment that I've been training for. I knew that there were only a finite number of streets in the immediate Garland area, and if I was able to run at infinite speed, at an infinite distance, I would find my car eventually. The problem, though, is I was shackled in a sense to my date, and so I had to figure out something I wasn't able to run with her right next to me. And so I walk up to a bench in the right outside the milk bottle, and I set her gently on that bench, and I tell her, wait right here. And then, like a knight going on a heroic quest, I start running as fast as I can. And from her vantage point, she sees me going into the distance, perfect form, disappearing into the horizon. And then about 15 minutes later, she sees me running back with perfect form on the other side of the street, passing her. I don't know how much time passes. Grass withers, flowers fade, civilizations rise and fall, and I'm beginning to give up hope. I'm out of breath, out of shape, out of hope. And then I see it, like an oasis in the desert, like the first seagull spotted by the Santa Maria. The Wiener Dog bike rack. Ladies and gentlemen of Pivot Storyslam, I could have kissed that Wiener Dog bike rack. And right beyond it is my car. And I get in, my phone's dead, but I get in and I'm driving back, going to the bench, expected to be greeted as a hero or a liberator. But when I get there, the bench is empty. The street is silence. Somewhere, surely, a goose honks. And I figured there's basically only three things that could have happened. One, so despite her inebriation, she managed to call Uber to give her a ride home herself, showing that no woman needs a man to give her a ride home, unless the Uber driver is a man, which we don't really know in that case. And second, the second possibility is that because of my foolishness, she had been kidnapped, like the Lindbergh babe. Like the last time I'd seen her was outside the milk bottle, and the next time I'd see her would be outside of a milk carton. The third possibility, however, was most likely at all. That we were, in fact, people of equivalent attractiveness. But just that my flaws and her flaws were so profoundly different that when we brought us together, we were like matter and antimatter. The resulting disaster was so horrific and explosive, it tore a hole in the quantum fabric of reality, and reality corrects itself, creating a momentary pocket universe to rise up and swallow the paradox of incompatibility and suck her away into another dimension, which honestly was a bad sign for a burgeoning relationship. But lesson learned. And you know what? If any of you people drink too much wine and need a ride home tonight, my grandma's in the audience. And I guarantee you, she won't try to F you.